Hi friends. This was very on a whim type of a video. We are looking into my latest favorite foundations, but first, if it's your first time here, hi. I'm Alicia. Thank you so much for clicking on my video, and if you are returning, well, thank you for visiting me again. Kinky Sweat stands for my kinky hair and sweat life. I am a fitness professional who loves things all movement and beauty. If you want to check out what I do in between the makeups, you can head over to my Instagram. For the last 6 months, I have acquired a lot of foundation, and I found the one that I did buy, have been wearing, I love. But then you might ask yourself, why do you love them, Alicia? Are there different reasons out there for you to decide if you want to use the Suqqu one day and the LYS the other? So I have some b-roll from previous videos I had already filmed. I'll add some extra b-roll in this video, and just wanted to let you know, timestamps will be down below. Okay. Also, I'm not going to have wear tests for the foundations. I'll speak on their wear, but unfortunately, the foundations that I wore in January, February are going to be very different wear wise now going into May and June. I might have a different weather situation than you in terms of humidity. I might be doing different things. I work out a lot. Therefore, there are so many variables that can influence wear that I feel are just not consistent. So I don't want to disappoint you, but that's just the truth, okay? What I will comment on is the finish, the color match, and my overall thoughts on the foundation. Is that fair? Thank you so much. Before we get started though, why don't we come in a little closer? That's enough. We are starting bare face, and usually the primer that I rely on is my moisturizer. Moisturizer of choice is the Good Molecules Silicone-Free Priming Moisturizer. But now we're getting into a higher UV index, okay? I'm also applying the Skin Aqua sunscreen that will be linked in my Yes Style Korean skincare favorites video. I also like to apply the Cosrx Snail Mucin under my moisturizer and sunscreen, and I think that definitely positively influences the finish of my skin and it being optimal for foundation. Let me first go from like lightest coverage to heaviest, and I definitely have to start with the Fenty Beauty Blur, what is this called? Eaze Drop Blurring Skin Tint in number 10. This had mixed reviews, but I do enjoy not only its ease of use, but mostly just the color match and the fact that I can just apply it with my fingers as I would a moisturizer. I think optimal for those who don't like a traditional foundation, who want something that wishes to apply something that doesn't require a lot of commitment, that's going to give you nice evening of skin tone. Your hyperpigmentation will still show through, and I think that's perhaps an opportunity for you to go in with concealer so you could better spot treat with a little more precision and not overwhelm the skin with makeup. So here we're looking at the Eaze Drop. Again, I think number 10 is fine for my skin match. It is light coverage. The dry down, I would say, is natural. Right now, I'm normal combo. Like the needle on the spectrum is moving on me a little bit because the weather is getting warmer. Humidity is changing, okay? So it's going to have a much different, I think, finish from when I had applied it. We're looking maybe 2 months ago at this point, perhaps, when it was a little cooler. But right now, I really love how it's not soft matte, not on me right now anyway. Definitely a little more natural in finish. It has just the right amount of coverage so you can see between side 1 and 2 that is evening out the skin tone. It definitely presents that blurring effect and just makes my skin look more polished. I thought we will go in with what I would consider to be slightly more in coverage. That is the LYS Triple Fix Serum Foundation. I have the shade TN3. This, I believe, is more neutral, and I do think offers up a little more coverage than the Fenty. Now, why am I doing that? I don't know. I'm gonna do half a pump because I do think a full pump is sufficient for my entire face. But since we're just doing half the face, I'm taking half a pump, and this definitely is warmer than the Fenty. Now, the serum word in the title, I think, consistent with how this foundation blends into the skin and the finish that it leaves behind. I do think this to be a little more dewy in finish than the Fenty. It has a touch more coverage, but I do appreciate how the skin is left looking like itself. It doesn't overwhelm the skin. It doesn't cover up in an overwhelming way. So you are free if, for instance, I wanted to apply a little more coverage here on this part of my face where I have some post IH, I could apply a little more foundation. And although you still see the blemishes, it has a blurring effect that I'm okay with. I definitely am fine with this level of coverage. I don't want to completely obliterate my blemishes because that's just not realistic, okay? They're there because of me. I own it and it's fine. So between the two, as I feel my skin now, there's again definitely more of like a dewy-like finish from the LYS versus the Fenty. Now, what does that mean for you? If you're a little more oily on the spectrum, I do think the Fenty is a better fit, but I remember several people had commented back when I did my LYS video that they have oily skin and the Triple Serum Fix foundation is fine on them. Something I would recommend if you wanted to offset the more dewy finish from the LYS is to maybe set your skin first with a loose powder so that could absorb a little more of the zhuzh from the LYS, if you will, or you can lightly powder on top with their Triple Fix pressed powder, which I absolutely love. It's lightweight in nature and it's not going to make your skin look cakey. Or you go with the light dusting of powder foundation so you could control any potential oil breakthrough that could happen during the day. Before we move on to the next two foundations, I did find the LYS wore reasonably well considering that it's not like a long wear foundation, but it'll be interesting to see how it wears now in the warmer climate. So definitely will keep you updated on that. And I do prefer the slightly warmer tint that the LYS offers. This was great, you know, for the winter spring, but now we're getting a little more bronze, okay? All right, moving into what I consider light coverage sector foundations. I'll first start with the Koyudo, the coveted Aqua foundation. This is in shade 143. Because this is a Japanese foundation, you can automatically assume, which is what I did, it will deliver elegant coverage without masking the skin. And I think that's very important because I do believe that looks better on photographs, it looks better on video, you know what I'm saying? And it's an aqua foundation because it has more of a liquidy texture. It's not as creamy as, let's say, the Suqqu cream foundation or even its counterpart, the Koyudo moisture foundation, which we'll be getting into soon. So I'm going to do a little bit. I'm going to dot it around this time, actually. Go back in with my Koyudo brush, which I really should wipe. Hold please. I do hope this is helpful, friends. I know I get a little all over the place when I'm talking about makeup, but I had wanted to do this for quite some time. I just knew it would take a little bit from my skin when I'm, you know, removing and taking off. But you'll let me know. You'll let me know your feedback down below with what I can do better or I can mention next time if I ever do something like this again with, let's say, bronzer coming at you soon. I absolutely adore this foundation. I think this is great for those who like tinted moisturizers, who even like the Fenty or something like the Fenty Eaze Drop, but they still want a foundation, but they don't want too much. The Aqua, the skin match is good. You can see from this side, it doesn't lighten me, but it's definitely, yes, my skin tone. When it settles down, however, I think it kind of melts into my complexion and doesn't look as light as it initially does. But you can see how it's just beautifully blurring here on my blemishes, how it evens out the skin tone, and the finish left behind reminds me of the LYS, but dare I say it feels a little lighter because the name Triple Fix Serum Foundation, I think accurate to describe the LYS, because sometimes when I apply a serum, my skin does have like that bouncy type of a feel, which is what I get after applying the LYS. But when I apply the Aqua foundation from Koyudo, it doesn't have that same dewiness. It has bounce and elasticity, but it doesn't look dull on the skin, but it dries down a little bit more. I feel it sets a little bit more than LYS. The Eaze drop sets a little more than the Koyudo, but I do prefer that there's a little more luminosity to it. I don't know if you were able to detect that there was not as much luminosity in the Eaze drop compared to the LYS. I do believe this has a little more luminosity than the Eaze drop, but doesn't feel as heavy as the LYS. When I use the word heavy, I don't mean like, I'm putting on Ben Nye, okay? It's more so that it doesn't have that serum type of a texture. I believe it's more like a light lotion, if you will. I think now appropriate to go in. I know I bought this way back, but I have to include Pat McGrath's Skin Fetish Sublime Perfection foundation because I still use this foundation. I think it gorgeous. I know this was hit or miss with several other people, but it's fine. Light medium 14. I think of the Koyudo actually when I think about the Pat McGrath. Dare I say the Pat McGrath is more liquidy in texture. But if you were wondering about the two, the Koyudo doesn't have alcohol. So if you want a lighter foundation in terms of texture and finish, but you wanted to stay away from the alcohol found in the Pat McGrath formula, then maybe the Koyudo is for you. The color matching is tricky, however. They don't have an extensive range. I know it's a Japanese brand, but they're in the US, and I have heard that celebrities can request custom blends. I don't know if that option is open for everybody, but it is there. So I think, who was it that requested? Was it Kerry Washington that requested a special shade match from Koyudo? You could let me know down below. Same expectation here from the Pat McGrath. Doesn't obliterate, doesn't completely cover my blemishes, but just enough for what I need. I could go in with concealer. I do think I get a slightly better shade match from LM14 versus 143, but both for me are very similar in terms of the finish. You still have a little bit of luminosity and radiance without it being dewy or greasy or oily. I do find these hold well despite their lighter texture, and dare I say, I feel much more optimal for summer use, simply because, again, liquidy, not too creamy. Your skin doesn't breathe, it doesn't have lungs, but metaphorically, it feels that the skin has a veil of coverage. Your skin still looks like itself, just better. Ooh, what should we go in with next? Well, I think we're heading into the middle of the road, medium coverage selects. I definitely have to start with the Shiseido, both the Synchro Skin Self-Refreshing and Radiant Lifting. I had purchased the Shiseido maybe, oh my goodness me, 2018? That's a long time ago. I repurchased this shade in Oak because Citrine, and I think at that time I might have used self tanner, or I just didn't see the light and I was tanning, shame on me. My complexion was vastly different shade wise than how it is now. So I went in with Oak, and the primary difference between the two, the self-refreshing is more soft matte, is longer wearing, is not going to have the same radiant finish like the Radiant Lifting as the name implies. I do think perhaps though this is a little more summer skin friendly. So here is the texture, a lot more creamy in nature, but this foundation was and still is a hit for many because I think it has impeccable coverage without it feeling too heavy on the skin. I think the olive undertones that I feel prominent in this line is a true olive neutral undertone for many that have a hard time finding that match. I thought this was a more reasonable match for me compared to the Citrine, and you can just see immediately how this delivers much more coverage than both the LYS and the Eaze drop, as well as the Koyudo Aqua Foundation and the Pat McGrath. Now you see it's a little light. I might have to get maple. I shade matched myself over, the new year. So, the vibe right now is a little more bronzy. That's what I gravitate towards. And here's a close-up of the finish. Every time I use this foundation, I am just reminded immediately how beautiful the coverage is. The finish is perfect for me. It's not too luminous, it's not too soft matte. It sits right in the middle, and I think covers a wide spectrum of skin conditions. Even if you sit near the drier part of the spectrum, I do think this can still work. And because of that, I think more suitable for warmer weather, definitely longer wearing than any of the ones that I had just presented here. And again, coverage without a lot of product. I think I just did half a pump. That is good for me. I don't need any more than that. I think it smooths out the skin. It's blurring. It just leaves behind a gorgeous canvas. So, Shiseido, always. And now let's go in with the Radiant Lifting. The Radiant Lifting is an interesting, how do I say this? It's an interesting texture. It kind of grips the skin a little more than the Self-Refreshing does. This is in maple. And what I think a disadvantage with this foundation line, or rather with the two finishes, is that it's not a direct switch. Oak in this formula might not be the same shade match in the Radiant Lifting, which is what I think a lot of people were frustrated with, and rightly so, right? Because you want to make it as simple as possible when ordering online. And if the brand tells you to get the same shade that you are in a foundation you already have, and you discover that it's not in fact the right shade match, you get a little frustrated, you know what I mean? So I think it would be more helpful in that regard to give a little bit of a warning. How you order shoes and they're like, you really should order a size half up or full size up because these run small. This foundation runs lighter or darker, up or down. So if you're oak in this shade, then you might consider maple in this shade. Something. Might that be a little complicated? Sure. But I think necessary, especially when this released over quarantine, when people really weren't going out, or even if they could and they couldn't get to a physical store, would have been helpful to know when ordering online. So here's the Radiant Lifting. You can see you got a little more glow from here, and the Self-Refreshing, not as glowy, but not flat either. And just from the feel, this definitely sets a little more than the Radiant Lifting. And when I say that, I would leave this unset. I wouldn't go in with powder, but I would go with a little dusting of something on the Radiant Lifting side. On the days that I had tested this foundation with wearing a mask while working out, there was some wear here, but that was understandable because the moisture that's created with the breathing, I think, wears the foundation a lot faster than it would if there was no mask being worn. So those are just some considerations to take in. But other than that, both of them, I absolutely love. The Radiant Lifting, if you don't use too much, that's the thing. You can use too much of the Radiant Lifting. You could be a little more liberal with the Self-Refreshing, and I think that's why people like this more if you tend to go in with a heavier hand. This requires a lighter application where I think it will just leave behind the optimal finish, so it's not going to look too overly made up. Ooh, I need to wear this more often. What was I thinking? I am neglecting the good stuff, okay? Where should we go in now? I think I want to go in with the Lancome. I had the pleasure of working with them on a sponsored video, so they did actually send me a few shades. And there was a shade, I don't remember. I had another shade. Oh, I remember. That was gifted to us by Ricardo, who was on Behind the Beauty. This is actually a favorite foundation amongst many. And out of all the shades that Lancome was so nice to send, I am shade 420 Bisque Neutral. And I actually would hold this in the same category as the Shiseido Self-Refreshing, as it is soft matte, but It does not dull the complexion, nor does it look dry. It provides ample coverage without overwhelming the skin. And it's just an easy peasy type of a application in that I feel you'll get the right amount of coverage, and the way it sets, I feel, does not require you to apply powder after. I mean, it is a beautiful finish. I'm waiting for the sirens to go by, excuse me. The match is great. 420 bisque is pretty dead on for me. And neutral would imply maybe it look a little more not as warm, but man, I like it a lot. And every time I use this, I'm just thoroughly impressed with the coverage, how I don't need to apply a lot to achieve the coverage. And I consider the Teint Idole to be old, reliable in terms of you know what to expect. It's gonna hold you down. If I was stuck on a desert island with this foundation, I'll be fine. I'll be completely satisfied. I will love the coverage, the way it dries down on my skin, how I don't necessarily need to set it, and how it is long wearing. It's going to grab the skin in a way that's not going to look tight, that's not going to look like your complexion is suffocating, but it's going to allow for that veil of coverage and, again, that radiant finish that I feel optimal for many skin conditions. And the fact that the Teint Idole has several shades, so you know it's winning in a lot of categories. And all these foundations that I'm presenting have no fragrance, well, maybe except one, and I'll mention that when we get to it. And that's another reason why I love these foundations, because they're just easy to use. You don't need a lot. But for the Teint Idole specifically, it's just, again, just holds me down. Look at it. Look. Holds me down. Following up with, let me see here. Ooh, okay. I'm going to go in with Suqqu. I feel they sit on different parts of the spectrum. Suqqu, you gotta commit to a little more because it's in the jaw, okay? I got my little spatula that came with the foundation. This is a lot more creamy than the Teint Idole. A lot more creamy than the Pat McGrath, the Eaze Drop, the LYS. So this is the texture we're looking at. 035 is my shade in the Suqqu. You don't need a lot. You do not need a lot. Now you could check out our most recent interview with Jorge from Suqqu. We were saying George, but it's Jorge. I'm sorry, Jorge. He was explaining the technology of this foundation, and I'm just blown away by just its intelligent formulation. And the Lancome is intelligent too. Okay, I'm not saying it's dumb. You know, when it comes to Japanese technology with complexion products, is simply unmatched. And what I admire the cream foundation from Suqqu for, this literally is like my skin but better 10.0. I love how it's not as soft matte as Lancome. And I could appreciate, okay, a soft matte moment when it's necessary, when I know I need my makeup to stay on, when it cannot wear off. It needs to look fresh for hours and hours and hours. I can't put into words. First of all, they take great care in their shade matching. It's not extensive, but the reason for that is because they want to make sure each shade has like 3 levels of undertones that you hit throughout the day. So the longer you wear the cream foundation, the better it's gonna look. And that's hard to come by with some foundations, right? You know, at the end of the day, it just looks dull. It looks like it needs to be taken off. Like you've had your run. All right, let me get this cleansing balm ready. The cream foundation, though, it melts into your skin and, dare I say, fuses with it in a way that leaves your skin still, it looks like itself, but enhanced, amplified. And that's really hard to achieve with a lot of foundations that look obviously like a foundation, right? It's obvious you have makeup on. The cream foundation from Suqqu, again, so elegantly formulated that every time I apply it, oh my heavens. And I think an ideal shade match for me. The Lancome Bisque 420 and the Suqqu 35 I like better than a 143 from Koyudo. I do. The Moisture Foundation. I was going to say something else. The Moisture Foundation, I feel better match for me because the 143 in the Moisture is a lot warmer than the 143 in the Aqua. I don't know why, but that's how it is. The Lancome sets a little bit more than the Cream Foundation. Cream Foundation from Suqqu, definitely more satin. I can't go wrong with either. If I had to choose, yes, on days that I am short on time and feeling a little lazy, it happens. I'd rather pump out my foundation than scoop out my foundation. But if I had time, I would choose a Suqqu simply because my skin looks like silk. It looks like freaking silk, okay? One more application because my skin's feeling. And I actually have B-roll from the next two foundation sticks I want to present, and I could speak on those. But I wanted to quickly apply the last on-camera demo, and that is the latest, the greatest, KVD Beauty Good Apple Bottom Foundation. This is in Tan 60. Now, I was perplexed. I was not expecting something to feel this emollient and dry down the way it does. It definitely dries down more soft matte than I would have initially expected. And because of that, I think ideal for summer, faux show. You don't need a whole lot. Dare I say, you could use this to spot treat. Like, look, totally gone. This definitely has more coverage than the Aqua, the Eaze drop. Sometimes I actually combine this with the Eaze drop. I think that's a nice concoction. A little more coverage than the Mcgrath. A little more than the Shiseido for sure. I think actually this has the most coverage out of all the foundations here. But this has the most, for me, matte dry down out of all of them. Again, it feels so slippy in the compact, but when you blend it in and it has time to dry down, it's not moving. So because of that, as I was playing with it, combining it with other foundations, I do think this to be more optimal for hotter weather. I do. Despite it being emollient, I think it's definitely soft matte in finish. If you're oily, maybe it'll be a little more satin because I don't want my foundation to look completely matte. I want it to have a little bit of glow to it so it doesn't look so flat on my skin. But yeah, man, I really like the Good Apple. I like that I could just punch into the compact and go on straight to my face. That's not the most hygienic way to go. I understand that, but I'm gonna, I'll spray a little alcohol and it is fine. And now to go in with the Koyudo Moisture Foundation in 143. This goes a long way. So I want to be a little more conservative with my application. Far warmer than the Aqua Foundation in 143. This is more satin and finish. And dare I say, this has more coverage than the Aqua Foundation. And because it's the Moisture Foundation, it's going to have a little more radiance to it as well. The Aqua Foundation, I think, dried down more natural than satin. And the coverage isn't bad either. I think it sits similarly coverage-wise with the Aqua. But you can see there's a lot more luminosity to it, a lot more radiance. And I just love the texture of it. Now, between these two, you can see just based on the reflection from sitting in front of natural light that this doesn't have as much glow as the Moisture. The Moisture from Koyudo, a lot more glow, maybe more appropriate if you are a drier skin type. If you don't want something that's soft matte like the KVD, then I think you should go with the Moisture Foundation. And dare I say, I consider the Moisture Foundation to be in the same category as the Suqqu in terms of just leaving behind the skin looking like silk, okay? I do like the Cream Foundation betcha because it's not as dewy as the Moisture. And because of that, I feel I can still get away with it over the summertime. The moisture, I do think more fall winter for me. Not that I can't use it in the summer, but I would have to set it, or I'll have to mix it with another foundation. Like I'll have to mix it with the KVD, for instance. I don't think I will be able to rely on this on its own, because I think it's just gonna be a little too zhuzhy for June, July, and August. Maybe even some of September. Now getting into some B-roll, looking into the Vital Skin foundation stick from Westman Atelier. This is in number 9. I do like the shade match. I can't really put my finger on this type of texture. It's like, it's skin-like in finish, but it doesn't have the same radiance as, let's say, the Moisture foundation or even the Suqqu cream foundation. You know, I'm still on the fence about it in terms of it being my ultimate favorite. I do like it, and I considered it a favorite. I think might I have done so in a few past monthly fave videos. Because it has coconut and I don't smell it on my face, I don't tend to grab it often, and that's okay. You know what I mean? I do appreciate the coverage, however. I do appreciate that it doesn't look too shiny when it sets. I definitely don't need to go in with the powder to set it, but because it's a very like skin-like type of a foundation with the oils and stuff, I don't think it's as long wearing. Now, many of you had said that it is, right? So really all depends on your skin type. It depends on your skin prep also. That will determine the wear of the Westman stick. But what I do prefer is the Huda Beauty Faux filter stick. Now, is it as bougie oogie clean beauty as the Westman? No, it's not, but I really don't care about that. I appreciate how the Huda Beauty Full Filter Foundation Stick doesn't have any fragrance. I love the color match. It's in Butter Pecan, and it's just so easy to use, and dare I say, leaves more of a blurring effect on me than the Westman Atelier does. I think the blend is smoother, and the coverage is phenomenal. If I wanted to apply more coverage, I can do so successfully without overwhelming the skin. It doesn't look cakey, especially because it's a lot creamier considering its stick formula than the previous foundation shown here in this video. I find that it's so natural in finish that it's a lot more sophisticated than several skin foundation sticks that I have encountered in the past. I think when we imagine foundation sticks, I automatically think heavy, stage makeup, theatrical, too much. The Huda Beauty Full Filter is just enough for a stick foundation formula. I think the shade range is great, and I think the shade range is pretty good, although I do remember someone saying that it was hard to find like a good olive undertone from the Huda line. So that's another thing, depending on your undertone, sometimes you don't necessarily have to go with the best finish or your favorite finish. Sometimes you got to go with the best undertone match, which I think is a priority over a finish. You can definitely adjust the finish. You can have a little more control over that than you can with undertones. It's a little more tricky, I think, to adjust on your own. But if I had to choose my favorite between the two foundation sticks, between the Westman Atelier and the Huda Beauty hands down. I'd rather use that. The Westman Atelier packaging is beautiful. Huda Beauty a lot more modest in design, okay? But I prefer this finish more. I think that is it. I hope that wasn't too confusing. Maybe you were like, I watched the whole thing and I do not know. Perhaps this was something that you wouldn't relying on to choose your favorite foundation from. Maybe you just wanted to hear my thoughts on all the foundations that I have used thus far over these past several months. I've been thinking about it a lot. I wanted to do this video and I was going back and forth and thinking about each foundation and using each foundation at least for a whole week so I could get a handle on how I feel about it, mixing it with other foundations, fully understanding the shade match and the finish and the wear. Let me know what your favorites have been down below. I would love to know your thoughts, maybe top three foundations thus far, what your favorites are from the ones I presented in this video. I will see you down in the comments, fam, and until then, that is a wrap. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope this video helped, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and maybe consider subscribing to my channel. And until then, I will see you in here again with another review tutorial, foundation extravaganza, monthly favorites, or lunchtime to chat. Take care, and I will see you again soon.